buttercup, you're a Barbie doll. Show them all what I'm made of. Strut down the hall, won't stop till I get enough.
All right, everyone, get ready, because today we are taking a deep dive into some really interesting stuff.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to be looking at money, humor, and sex in relationships.
Ooh, that's juicy.
It is, right? And we've actually got this podcast episode script that talks about the same stuff, and we're going to look at how these three things, which, let's be honest, are often kind of taboo to talk about.
Yeah, for sure.
They're actually like key ingredients to building a successful relationship, especially a long-term one.
Like when you think about it,
Yeah.
it's fascinating how these three seemingly totally separate things like money, humor, and sex
Yeah.
can tell you so much about a couple.
Yeah.
Like their communication styles, their values, how connected they are overall.
For sure. Okay, so let's jump right in and start with the money stuff.
Okay.
The source material dives right into how money represents way more than just dollars and cents.
Right.
Like, it's this hidden language that can tell you a lot about a couple's priorities and, like, the power dynamics in their relationship.
Exactly. I mean, think about it.
Yeah.
When couples fight about money,
Uh-huh.
it's rarely just a jody back about the money itself.
Right.
It usually comes from deeper issues,
Yeah.
like trust or
Yeah.
feeling secure, or even like how power is balanced in the relationship.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And the source material actually calls these different approaches money styles.
Money styles. I like that. Okay,
Yeah.
tell me more about these money styles.
So basically, you've got your spenders and your savers.
Okay.
You got people who like plan out every penny,
Uh-huh.
and those who are more spontaneous with their money. You know?
Totally.
And when you've got two people who have like completely opposite money styles
Yeah.
and they get together, let's just say things can get interesting.
I bet. So does that mean the key is just like finding someone who has a compatible money style to yours?
Well, it definitely makes things easier.
Okay.
But even then, communication is still super important.
Yeah.
It's not just about who pays which bills, you know.
Yeah.
It's about having shared financial goals. Talking about spending habits.
Mm-hmm.
Figuring out how to approach those tough conversations.
Which can be really tough.
Exactly.
How do you even start those? Our source material actually suggests using humor
Oh, interesting.
to ease the tension during money talks.
Really?
Yeah.
That seems kind of counterintuitive.
I know, right?
Like you're talking about serious stuff,
Yeah.
and then you're going to crack jokes.
Well, the thinking is that money conversations can get really serious and stressful, you know?
For sure.
And using a little humor can lighten the mood.
Okay.
And it can make it feel less like you're, like, interrogating each other
Yeah.
and more like you're a team working together.
I like that.
Yeah, so it's like you're using humor to remind yourselves that you're on the same side,
Right.
even when you're dealing with these tough financial decisions.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about money.
Mhm.
Let's move on to the next part of our relationship trifecta.
Okay.
Humor. The source material describes humor as the glue that holds relationships together.
Clue. Huh. Yeah. A bit of an overstatement.
Well, maybe not. Think about it.
Okay.
When you and your partner laugh together,
Yeah.
that creates a connection, a sense of intimacy.
Yeah, I get that.
It's a way to, like, lighten things up, diffuse tension,
Right.
and remind yourselves why you actually enjoy being around each other.
It's true. It's like your own little language.
Yeah. And it can be super powerful when you're disagreeing about something.
For sure.
The source even talks about using humor as a tool to resolve conflict.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Like, imagine you're in the middle of an argument
Mhm.
and then one of you cracks a well-timed joke.
Yeah.
That could totally de-escalate the whole situation.
Okay.
It can shift the energy and make it easier to find some common ground.
So you're not saying to just ignore the issue,
No, not at all.
but you're finding a way to reconnect and like move forward.
Yes. But wouldn't that depend on you and your partner having, like, similar senses of humor?
Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
Like, what one person finds funny, the other person might find totally off-putting.
For sure. And the source material talks about that too.
Okay.
About how there are all these different humor styles from
Yeah.
sarcasm to slapstick and
Yeah.
everything in between.
Right. So just like with money styles,
Exactly.
it's super important to understand your partner's humor
Mm-hmm.
and be sensitive to how they react to things.
Yeah, so it's not just about like trying to be funny all the time.
Right.
It's about making sure your humor lands well
Yeah.
and that it actually brings you closer.
Totally. I feel like that goes for communication in general, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. So we've tackled money and humor.
Mm-hmm.
Are you ready to dive into the final piece of the puzzle?
Hit me with it.
Intimacy and sex.
All right, let's do it.
This can be a kind of tricky topic to talk about,
For sure.
but our source material emphasizes how important intimacy and sex are in any romantic relationship.
Yeah. And it's not just about physical pleasure.
Right.
It's about showing love,
Mm-hmm.
trust, and being vulnerable with each other.
And the source acknowledges that it's totally normal for partners to have different libidos
Yeah.
and different preferences.
Absolutely.
So how do you navigate those differences without it turning into a fight?
Well, communication is key, right?
It's like always coming back to communication.
Right.
But like open and honest communication
Yes,
where you don't judge each other.
Yeah.
And you don't pressure each other.
for sure.
So both people feel safe to say what they need and what they want,
Exactly.
what they like and don't like, even their fantasies.
I mean, that takes a lot of trust.
Oh, totally.
But when you have that,
Yeah.
it can be really amazing.
The source material even suggests talking about boundaries.
Boundaries.
Yeah, which might not sound very sexy at first,
Yeah, I was going to say.
but it's actually super important.
Okay.
Because it ensures that both people feel respected
Mm-hmm.
and that everyone's getting what they need out of the relationship.
Makes-
So it's all about making sure each person feels heard and understood.
Right.
And remember, intimacy isn't a one-size-fits-all thing.
No, definitely not.
It changes over time, and it needs
Okay.
to be nurtured.
Yeah, like think about date nights,
Ooh, date night.
trying new things together.
Yeah.
Just finding ways to keep that spark alive.
I love that. It's like remembering to have fun with each other, even in the bedroom.
Absolutely.
Now, before we move on,
Okay.
I want to go back to something you said earlier about these three elements being connected.
Oh, yeah.
Can you talk a little more about that?
Sure. So it might seem weird at first,
Okay.
but how a couple handles money,
Mm-hmm.
their sense of humor,
Yeah.
and their intimacy
Mm-hmm.
can actually tell you a lot about how they communicate and care for each other overall.
Oh, interesting. So it's not just about mastering each of these things individually.
Right?
It's about understanding how they all work together
Exactly.
and how they influence each other within the relationship.
Yeah, that's when it gets really interesting.
I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Well, for example, did you know that financial stress can really impact intimacy and how satisfied people are in their relationships?
It makes sense.
Right. But I also mentioned that humor can be like a buffer
Yeah.
in those situations.
So we're not just talking about money, humor, and sex separately. We're
Yeah.
talking about this much bigger picture.
Yeah.
This is getting good. I can't wait to dive deeper into all of this.
Me too.
All right, so we've been talking about how money, humor, and sex are all connected in these really interesting ways.
They really are.
But let's be real, navigating these things in a relationship, it's not always easy.
Oh, absolutely not. It
Yeah.
can be tricky.
Yeah, for sure. And actually, the source material we're looking at today, it highlights some common pitfalls that couples run into.
Oh, really? Like what? Give me the juicy stuff.
Okay, so one big one is avoiding those important money conversations.
Yeah, it's tempting to just not talk about it,
It is.
especially when things feel tense.
Right, it's easier to just sweep it under the rug.
Totally.
Yeah.
But the thing is, when you do that, it can build up resentment,
Yeah.
and then that leads to bigger problems later on.
It's like that saying, communication is key.
Right.
But with money, it's like extra important.
Yeah, we got to talk about our money goals.
Mm-hmm.
Any anxieties we have about money,
Yeah.
even those little spending habits that drive us crazy.
Oh, for sure. And it's not just about what you say,
Right.
it's how you say it too.
Exactly. The source talks about using those good communication skills,
Oh, yeah.
like active listening,
Uh-huh.
using I statements so you're not blaming each other.
Yeah, so you're creating a space where it feels safe to talk about money,
Right. Even when it's uncomfortable.
which it often is.
Totally.
Yeah.
And the source also mentions dismissing humor as a pitfall.
Oh, interesting. Because we were just talking about how powerful humor can be.
I know, right? It's such a good tool for connecting and relieving stress.
Yeah, but sometimes we get so serious, especially with things like money,
Yeah.
that we forget to laugh together.
Sad, really.
It is. And even worse, sometimes we shut down our partner's attempts at humor.
Oh, that's gotta hurt.
It does. It's like saying their way of coping isn't valid.
Ouch.
Yeah, and it creates distance in the relationship.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
We got to remember that everyone finds different things funny.
That's so true.
So even if it's not your style of humor,
Yeah.
try to be open to it.
It's about being respectful of how they communicate,
Exactly.
even if it's through silly jokes or puns that make you cringe a little.
At least they're trying.
Exactly.
Wow.
Okay, so we've got avoiding money talks, dismissing humor. What's the third pitfall?
Neglecting intimacy.
Ooh, that's a big one. And it's easy to let that slide.
It is, especially when life gets busy.
Yeah, work, kids, all that stuff.
But when you neglect intimacy, it can create this distance between you
Mm-hmm.
that can be hard to come back from.
And we're not just talking about physical intimacy here.
No, not at all.
There's emotional intimacy, intellectual intimacy, even experiential intimacy.
Yeah, like those moments you share that make you feel close.
Yes. It's about making time for each other,
Mm-hmm.
being present,
Yeah.
nurturing that spark even when you've been together a long time.
Date nights,
Uh-huh.
trying new things,
Yeah.
even just cuddling up and talking about your day
It's making an effort to stay connected
on every level.
on all the levels. Okay, so we've got these 3 big pitfalls:
Mm-hmm.
avoiding money talks,
Yep.
dismissing humor,
Uh-huh.
and neglecting intimacy.
So is there like a common thread here?
There is. The source material says it's mutual respect.
That makes sense.
Right. It's the foundation for navigating all 3 of these areas.
Okay.
Each person needs to feel heard,
Mhm.
valued, and
Yeah.
supported.
Without that,
Yeah,
it's just so hard to have a healthy relationship.
Totally. So how do we put that mutual respect into practice? How do we actually avoid these pitfalls and build a relationship that can handle anything?
Well, the source has a surprisingly simple solution:
Okay.
scheduled check-ins.
Scheduled check-ins. Tell me more.
Yeah, so I know it might sound a little formal,
A little bit.
but it's about setting aside time
Okay.
to talk about these sensitive topics.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe once a week, once a month, whatever works for you.
Okay.
It gives you this structure
Uh-huh.
where you can both feel safe to talk openly.
So you're not just trying to squeeze these conversations in randomly, which can be awkward.
Totally. And it takes the pressure off, too.
Right, because you know you'll have the time to talk about it.
Yeah. And these check-ins don't have to be super serious.
Okay.
Remember, humor is important.
So make it fun.
Yes. Maybe order some takeout.
Ooh, takeout.
Pour some wine.
Wine. Okay, I like where this is going.
Make it like a date night.
Where you're connecting and catching up on these important parts of your relationship.
It's like investing in your partnership.
I love that. So as we move into the last part of our deep dive, think about this. What really stood out to you about the challenges and solutions related to money, humor, and sex? Wow, we've really covered a lot in this deep dive.
We have.
Looking at how money, humor, and sex all play a role in relationships.
And how they all connect.
Yeah, we saw how these things that we often think of as totally separate
Right.
are actually like super intertwined, and how
Yeah.
they show how couples communicate, what they value, and how they take care of each other.
Yeah. And we talked about some of the common traps that couples fall into.
Like what?
Avoiding those money talks.
Right.
Dismissing each other's humor.
Oh, yeah.
And neglecting intimacy.
Those are big ones. But we also explored some solutions, right?
We did.
Like learning to communicate better,
Yeah.
being aware of each other's humor styles,
Mm-hmm.
and making time for those check-ins
There's a key.
to keep the relationship strong. It's like we've been peeling back the layers
I like that analogy.
to see what makes relationships work.
And how those hidden connections between money, humor, and sex
Yeah.
really affect things.
Now, before we wrap up,
Okay.
I want to go back to something you said earlier
Okay, what's that?
about mastering this whole interplay
Mm.
between money, humor, and sex.
Right.
You said that could be the secret to really fulfilling long-term relationships.
Would I say that? I'm full of wisdom.
You are. What did you mean by that?
Okay, so think about how we usually approach these things.
Okay.
We see them as separate problems to solve.
Like challenges to overcome.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We make budgets.
Uh-huh.
We try to be funny.
Yeah.
We plan date nights.
All those things.
But what if,
Yeah.
instead of seeing them as separate things,
Mm-hmm.
we saw them as all part of one big picture?
So instead of like checking things off a list,
Right.
we see them as part of how we communicate overall,
Exactly.
how we handle conflict,
Mhm.
how willing we are to be open and vulnerable with each other.
It's about seeing the connections.
It's a bigger picture.
Yeah, and realizing that mastering this interplay,
Mhm.
it's not about checking boxes or finding the perfect balance.
It's about being intentional,
Yes.
being curious,
Uh-huh.
and really wanting to understand and connect with our partner on a deeper level.
It's a journey.
It is. It's like we're always learning and growing,
Mhm.
both as individuals and as a couple.
And those 3 elements, money, humor, and sex,
Yeah.
they can give us so much insight into what's really going on in the relationship.
They're like clues.
Yeah, clues to the bigger mystery.
Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah.
I want to leave everyone with one final thought.
Okay, sure.
Don't be afraid to have those conversations,
Yes.
even the tough ones.
Talk about money, find out what makes each other laugh,
Yeah.
and make intimacy a priority,
In all its forms.
because the best relationships, they're the ones that embrace all of it.
The good, the bad, the messy, the funny.
And the journey of figuring it all out together.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into money, humor, and sex in relationships.
It's been fun.
It has. Until next time, keep laughing
Keep loving.
and keep those conversations going.
Absolutely.
Sound the alarm. I'm coming up. We'll have a ball. I'm sweet like a buttercup. You're Barbie doll. Show them all what I'm